Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal podcast, is brought to you by Dreamfasting, the Dark Crystal Experience, the Facebook group on the Dark Crystal by fans for fans. To join the group, search on Facebook for Dreamfasting, the Dark Crystal Experience.
Another world, another time, in the age of wonder.
You are listening to
Trial by Stone.
Trial by Stone!
Trial by Stone!
This is what I came for.
Your vital essence, the Dark Crystal.
I can feel something. Hear it almost.
Don't move.
Don't move? Where would I go?
Quiet!
Here's your host, Philip Mitchell. Hello and welcome to episode 51 of the podcast. I'm your host, Philip Mitchell, and just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Trial by Stone. As we continue on chatting about all things Dark Crystal, as we continue to anticipate or build the anticipation for the release of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And in case if you haven't checked out the last episode, on episode 50, I got a chance to chat to James from the UK, and we actually, chatted a lot about Age of Resistance and what sort of news and sort of little updates that we're able to get when he met with the Frauds at a fairy event back in early to mid-March. So that was an excellent time. I had a great time chatting to him, and I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. But if you haven't checked it out, just definitely give it a listen. It's worth a listen. And also, I just want to ask if you enjoyed this episode and if you like to get early access to all our future episodes of Trial by Stone, you can check out our Patreon campaign, which is at www.patreon.com/Dark Crystal Podcast. And for just $1 a month, you get access to all our episodes of Trial by Stone way in advance before it gets released on the Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Podbean. You actually get a special RSS feed that you can put on your podcast app of choice and listen to all our episodes, our back catalogue of the podcast with Trial by Stone, the Dark Crystal Minute, and the Gathering songs. But also, you get to be ahead of everyone with listening to future episodes of the podcast, which is really cool. And the thing with Patreon is with supporting the podcast, it really means a lot, because it means that I'll be able to produce more content and better content for the Trial by Stone, which is sort of become a Dark Crystal podcast network right now. So which is very cool. And it also helps just pays the bills that comes to with producing podcasts with monthly fees to keep running the show. So any help is greatly appreciated, and please spread the word about the podcast to help keep the show running for many more years to come. So in this episode, I got a chance to chat to Laszlo Burkhardt, and for those that don't know him, he is one of the moderators of the Dark Crystal Facebook group called Dreamfasting, the Dark Crystal Experience, and they're the supporters, big supporters of this podcast. So he was the one that sort of himself and Azelle started the Facebook group for it. And always every day there's always something to discuss. There's always someone posting about the Dark Crystal, which is awesome. And he's from Switzerland. Probably one of the biggest Dark Crystal fans, who's saw the film from from when it first came out, and it was great chatting to him about how he discovered the Dark Crystal. He told me lots of a couple of stories about one in particular about meeting the Frauds for the first time, and so much more. So I really hope you enjoy our chat with myself and Laszlo, and I guess let's go to the Podling Village and chat to Laszlo. Enjoy. So yeah, I just want to say, Laszlo, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here. It's been a long time, really. We discussed this years ago, and yeah, somehow got lost.
Yeah.
But now it's,
Yeah, we got
the great conjunction had come.
Yes,
now.
it has. Yeah, we've. I mean, that is the thing about with my podcast. I mean, especially me being from Australia and you're from Switzerland, so I know time. The time zones are very different, and it can be a bit of a challenge sometimes
Indeed.
to work something out. And it's something I've been wanting to chat to you for a while, because I know, not only you're a big fan of the Dark Crystal, but you also moderate probably one of the best Dark Crystal fan groups, Dreamfasting, the Dark Crystal Experience.
Cool. It's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Me and Ezekiel, we try our best to post good stuff and be really in depth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, like, there's every day when I go on the group, there's always lots of posts that are happening. Whether it's like something that hasn't been seen before, or just people speculating about things with all things Dark Crystal, or even just chatting about it. So
It's really amazing. I think the best fans are here.
Yeah.
in the Dreamfasting group. Yeah, really.
Yeah,
It's
we're
interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. A lot of passionate fans with Dreamfast and the Dark Crystal Experience. And so I guess, I mean, so we'll start off by, for me to ask you, which I always do on every episode of Trial by Stone, how did you discover the Dark Crystal, or how did you find out about the Dark Crystal?
Well, that was a long time ago. I was 10 years old, so yeah, it was in '83 when the movie came out in Switzerland. The first thing I saw about Dark Crystal was the trailer in E.T. and I was hooked. I thought, wow, that's finally a movie I really wanted. A movie without any humans, full creature movie. That was my dream. So yeah, even as a child. So.
It also came out I think '83 was sort of when it came out internationally. I mean, I think that same case with Australia as well. But I mean, for me, I was born in '87, so for myself, I sort of grew up with the film on VHS. So that's sort of how I got into the Dark Crystal, was through the VHS era in the '90s. Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. So you became a fan through VHS.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
But you saw it in a theater. You also saw it on the big screen.
Oh yes, yeah. I was able to see it in the big screen. I think in the early. I'm really trying to think. I think it was in the mid 2000s when I actually finally got to see it on the big screen. And I think the last time, and there's a cinema in Melbourne called the Astor Theatre, and they do screen the Dark Crystal, at least maybe once a year. It sort of varies. So
that's great.
yeah, whenever it's on, I'm just got to go check it out. It's very exciting, I guess, with the whole, I guess for the US, that they'll get a chance to see the Dark Crystal on the big screen in 4K, which is very cool.
I don't have any chance here.
Yeah, no, neither do I. Yeah, I actually, looked, went on the internet and said, try and find out if there was going to be any screenings in Australia, and didn't seem like the case. I mean, the good news I did hear, got in contact with someone, I think through Universal, who'll be distributing the 4K Blu-ray release, and the release date is pretty much the same day as when it's coming out in the US. So which is cool. So I'm glad that at least we don't have to wait as long for the 4K. Yeah. So
yeah. Now the 4K comes. So I'm really looking forward, so I can finally see it really in the best possible quality.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think based on what I read, with the press releases, how apparently it was they went through the original camera negatives to restore the film, so which is very exciting. So it'll be really interesting it'll be really interesting to sort of look at the differences between what was on the original with the Blu-ray release to the 4K release, and just how much difference there'll be in the quality with the Dark Crystal.
I'm looking forward, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite exciting, because when I bought Labyrinth, the 4K,
Yes, yeah.
I really didn't expect much because I thought, well, it's 35 millimeters. Okay, what's the difference with 4K? I mean, yeah, but really, it is better, much better than the Blu-ray.
Yeah. I mean, because I think I think the advantages that film has over digital, especially when bringing them to mediums like Blu-ray and 4K, is I think with film, converting from film to digital is you can almost set, I think, at any resolution quality wise. So you can easily get quite a good quality from 35 mil, converting it to, I think, to 8K or 4K as they've done. Yeah, which is really cool. And I mean, I did watch Labyrinth
Nice.
a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, and the one thing like I noticed that I didn't notice, watching on the Blu-ray and whatnot was how much glitter there was on this set, like on some of the rocks or just the background. Like I noticed that there was just the glitter was so much more noticeable. I don't know, was there things like from Labyrinth that you sort of picked on that you noticed on the 4K that you would not have thought about, noticing on the Blu-ray?
Well, textures, all the fine textures. Yeah, it's and the colors, of course. Yeah, it's just the whole image is fine. Uh, I think, yeah. So it's really worth to upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
if you are a fan,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think as a fan it is a must. Yeah.
And especially now, for fans of the Dark Crystal to be able to, to also get the 4K version of the film, I think it's definitely one of those, must-haves.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I'm a bit disappointed because of the supplements.
Yes,
I
of
really
course, yeah.
hoped there would be a work print or something.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Like I remember on the I mean back when darkcrystal.com they used to have like a forum section, and I think I created a forum about, here's my wish list of things to put on the
Yeah,
4K.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I did this too. Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, I know. But I mean,
Maybe lack of money. I don't know.
yeah, possibly, yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to, I don't know what they factor in when it comes to those sort of releases. And I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm so glad at least they have sort of one new special feature with the with Lisa Henson and Toby Froud. So that will be an interesting sort of special
Yeah,
feature to
that's
come.
cool. Yes.
And so, like, what was it about the film that sort of really captivated you, that you really got out of with the Dark Crystal?
It's the whole world, whole fantasy world. No humans. Everything was created. It looked so real to me. And the wonderful music, the design, it's just brilliant. Everything looks just beautiful, really. I mean, some people think Ogre is ugly or the Skeksis are ugly, but no, I think they look great.
Yeah, me too. It's like I think I just recall like Frank Oz. She's she's beautifully like ugly or something along the lines of that.
Yeah, I mean, ugly to me is a zombie or something that isn't symmetrical, you know.
Yes, yeah,
All the dark crystal creatures, they are symmetrical
yes, yeah.
and they look great, like animals. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
it's
mean,
just brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's just never been a film like The Dark Crystal, the way, the whole world feels real and everything about it is just, like just the amount of attention to detail and the work that.
Yeah, the detail, yeah, really. It's actually weird. I watched the VHS
Mhm.
back then, and you almost couldn't see anything.
No, yeah, because
There was no detail, nothing,
no,
and half of the image was cropped.
yeah, and like it's weird because even though watching on VHS, like I was still blown away with the film, and I mean I also remember like the scene when Jen enters Augra's observatory, and when he's in the cave,
Yeah,
you just see you only see
yeah,
black really, and so I think,
yeah,
and for me,
yeah.
I
It's
yeah
it's it's total black.
yeah
Yeah, yeah. Can't see anything.
no not at all,
Yeah,
and
it's
and I
funny, but it worked for it worked. I mean,
yeah.
if you don't have anything better, so
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, and like, and I think like that's probably like why like that's like one of the many scenes for me with the Dark Crystal that really brings a lot of memories. Is just because it's so dark, and then when you see the reveal, it's just like oh, so magical.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a brilliant set design. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And since then came the 90s, and there wasn't anything remotely near as complex or similar to Dark Crystal. So, okay, there was Labyrinth. I really love Labyrinth, but it has humans, so
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And there was the 90s, there was years with nothing on merchandise from Dark Crystal. Really, I thought I was the only one who loves it. All my friends, they laughed if I said, "Hey, I love Labyrinth. I really love Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal." They all thought, "Well, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah."
Yeah.
I was the only fan.
Yeah.
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 And merchandise was like nothing, and then Sideshow was the first who released these Gelfling dolls.
Yes. Yeah. They were. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, they aren't really good, but I was really happy to see something, to get something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, like, I mean, that's sort of, I mean, with the lack of sort of merchandise, that you sort of decided to do something about it, as a fan.
yeah, I created my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, you created the Castle of the Crystal and also the Crystal Shard. How did those projects sort of started for you?
First of all, the shard isn't my creation, but I
Mm,
used to have the original screen used shard,
yeah.
and there was we were in negotiations with a toy statue company in Asia, and well, the plan was to release it officially. Yeah, that didn't happen, unfortunately. So I managed to buy uh, some of the samples they already made.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's the story about the shard. So, well, it is an original casting, but not official. And Castle, I did, yeah, for myself first. That was a project about 6 months or so. And then lots of fans asked me to buy one. I really wanted one. So I contacted the Jim Henson company for asking about a license
Yeah, of course, yeah.
for the castle, yeah. And yeah, they wrote back. They said something about Plan B toys. Yeah, like Plan B already does busts, and we don't think we can make a deal now. We are very sorry. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, then I thought, okay, I must produce it myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and this is what happened. So that's also with a toy company. So it's professionally made, but
Yes, yeah.
unfortunately without license. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I mean, myself, like, I own, the castle and also, the shard, which I just, love them both and, always have them on displays. So it's like if anyone sort of pops over and they have a look
Yeah, thank you.
and, yeah, they always sort of marvel at the castle, the crystal, which I mean, that was just amazing work that yourself did, putting the attention to detail. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really happy to hear.
Because I mean, like with something like the Castle of Crystal, your only references are sort of being just from like stills from the film, and like was that sort of difficult to try and like get the detail with getting that to happen? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really difficult. It was months of search for the right images. Well, I have almost every vintage magazine or book about Dark Crystal. So there was some tiny bits here and there and here close up, and I collected every image I had, and then I really tried to imagine the 3D aspect, how this all works together. And I also had one or two full shots, which were pretty good, so I could take the proportions from it. I took each tower separate and measured them to really get an accurate sense of proportions, scale. So the whole castle looks as accurate as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just always, just amazed the work that you did with the castle. So yeah, thank you so much for making it happen. We're sort of at a very exciting time, with all things Dark Crystal, and I guess I might as well chat to you about sort of the new things that are sort of happening right now. I mean, especially with the new Netflix series, the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
Amazing,
yeah. So I mean.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. So I mean,
who would have thought that?
I know. Yeah,
I never thought it would happen.
No, neither did I. I mean, because
it's like a dream. We are in another dimension or something.
in another world, in the Age of Wonder, another time.
Yeah, in the Age of Wonder. Yeah, it's happening now.
It is. Yeah. So I mean, like. Yeah, what was your thoughts when you first heard about this Netflix show, that was happening? Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny because it was actually my birthday.
Oh, really?
May 18th. Yeah, it was my birthday, and
oh, wow.
Yeah, that was when the official press release came out. So I thought, what? It must be a joke. Someone made a joke for me for my birthday.
Yeah.
It was really crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really had to read twice and check and Googled and
yeah, me too. It's like going to darkcrystal.com and then looking at the PDF document from the Henson Company.
The 20 times.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah, that was really crazy. Yeah, I'm really happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, and I think I mean, the Jim Henson Company, they seem to be really, getting things moving, with the Dark Crystal franchise. Like I know in the past,
finally, it was about maybe 20 years when nothing happened really.
Yeah. And
now they realize it is something worth doing. There are lots of fans.
Yeah, and I think, especially once Age of Resistance hits, it's going to, reach a much bigger audience, and there'll be a lot more fans that are going to be introduced.
Bet,
yeah, no, which is so awesome.
Yeah, new merchandise, new figures.
Yeah, I know.
Statues.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. I mean, especially with Chronicle Collectibles, as being one of the many companies.
That's amazing, really. Well, it's all exciting. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Without a doubt.
About the price range, I don't know.
No. Yeah. It's just gonna be a wait and see with that one. But I think it's good to see.
It's worth
back,
getting. Yeah. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime chance. So I start saving.
Yeah. And I was just trying to think back with I'll talk about the Castle of the Crystal. I mean, because I know that book that came out in September, The Dark Crystal, Ultimate Visual History, there was this one page which
amazing,
had
really.
that photo of the Castle of the Crystal. It was like a big, massive, large scale castle. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
looks fantastic.
yeah. Yeah, I just never, I never actually imagined that it was, that big in scale. Like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, they made two or three different castles. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
it's really amazing, especially when the castle collapses at the end.
Yeah.
I think that was the large scale model.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's really so beautifully sculpted, but you can't really see it in the movie. So
Yeah. I know.
there isn't a really good shot of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
sadly.
No. No.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah.
What was really exciting, Johnny Wilson did a 3D rendering. I think you saw that
Yeah.
castle by
Yeah. I
Johnny
have.
Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing that. On, I think it
Yeah,
was on with Vimeo. Yeah.
that really looked awesome.
It did. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess for the
That was
listeners.
awesome.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought that's the way a new Dark Crystal movie could look with the camera movements,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
and it looked really great. It was
Yeah.
CG, but okay. I mean, I'm not against CG. If it's done well, it's all fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know that's sort of been one of the things that people are sort of, or fans have been sort of concerned about, if they're going to use, a lot of CG on characters or whatnot. But I kind of feel that it'll just be more for background. Pretty much, what was
Yeah,
matte
yeah,
paintings in the original film. That's pretty much what the
yeah,
CG, I would imagine.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. I really think it's all puppets and backgrounds, and maybe they enhance some shots with creatures walking, so you can
yes, yeah.
see the legs. I mean, in the original movie, you can't really see the Gelflings walk, only in a very few shots. So yeah, that's something that kind of bothered me. So
Yeah.
because when you see Jen and Kira, it's always from the waist up. So
Yeah. And then the
um,
wide shots
and I think
with
that
yeah.
was, yeah, very few wide
Mm.
shots. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think that would be better in the series.
Yes, yeah. And I guess, is there anything that you're sort of, looking forward to, like with Age of Resistance? Is there something that's sort of, the one thing that you'd love to see with the show?
I'd love to see the crystal cracked,
Mm.
some flashback maybe,
Yeah.
or something really how everything happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like, yeah, something like Creation Myths, Volume 1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But I think it's not going to focus on that. Yeah.
no. I mean, there is potential to do that. Just, I guess, because it's a TV medium, or it can, like, it has a potential to possibly do that through Dreamfasting. I
Yeah,
know for
they really should, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Even just little glimpses, that as
Yeah, it would
yeah,
be great. It's something every fan wants to see, how everything happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, and I know it's still still got a bit of a long wait, for the show, which I think it's. I mean, they haven't officially announced it, but all signs are sort of pointing to 2019. So
Yeah, really, it's lots of time, yeah.
yeah, I know, yeah, and I mean,
Especially for us.
yeah, no, yeah, been waiting a long time for new Dark Crystal, in that live action, seeing it on the screen sort of medium. Back before the Age of Resistance stuff, I thought, the comics and the young adult novels, that's probably as much as we'll
Yeah,
ever going to get, sort of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. I was disappointed by the comics,
Hmm.
Power of the Dark Crystal, yeah, because I mean, I read the original first draft by David Odell and Annette Duffy, and I thought it was really great. Um, I I I can't understand why they changed everything. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Quite a
it
number of
came out
differences. Yeah.
so yeah. I don't know. So
Okay. Yeah.
oh well. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, like, I would love to sort of to read so those original drafts. Once the whole 12 issue comic is out, just to compare the differences and whatnot. I know, like for me, like with I know with me with the comics, like they've been not too bad, but I think there's still a lot of questions I have, mainly just about how sort of the Skeksis and the Mystics, they sort of came back to Thra without the
Yeah,
Skeks
okay,
being there. So that's but
yeah, it's basically not correct. Yes.
yeah, yes. Or,
Yeah,
like
but I think they. Yeah, sorry.
I know, I was just going to say, like, I mean, the only thing I could really think of is if they actually split it apart before they transported back to Thra, but
Yeah,
it's one of those sort of lingering questions that I know for a fact. Well, I'm very certain they won't be explained at the comic at all, but it is something that I want to know about how that came about.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the splitting was wrong in the script too. So, but I thought it's everything else was so well done.
mm,
I accepted it. So
yeah,
I was okay with it because some people only saw the movie once,
yeah,
and I think that works fine for them. Yeah.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, if the writing is good, okay, that's a detail. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I know like that sort of wraps up that whole 12 issue. I think issue 12 comes out in March. So sort of, I am sort of looking
Okay.
forward to getting the full, at least get the whole full story of how the
Yeah,
Dark Crystal. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm buying them too. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I still enjoy them to some degree,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
even if it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's more for children, maybe.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, I guess I might as well talk about with how you sort of got involved with the whole Dark Crystal community with the Facebook, and how sort of the dream fasting, the Dark Crystal experience, sort of how it all happened.
I think first there was the Dark Crystal fan group, the
Mm.
other group.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were some problems there. So some of us decided to create our own group, Dreamfasting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was then added as an admin. So
Yeah.
it wasn't my idea. So
No. No. I think it was Ezekiel's, wasn't it? That sort of he started it all. Yeah, I mean, which is cool. And I mean, it's cool to have lots of different fan groups, anyways. So yeah, but yeah, just
yes, sometimes too many. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. We have now, I think, 4 Dark Crystal groups.
yeah. I
Or
think we do. Yeah, like
I think there is 4 now, huh? I made one for the board game.
yes, of course, yeah. And that was sort of
The board game group.
the board
The
game
Dark
group.
Crystal
Yeah,
board game group.
yeah,
Yeah, that was actually that was a joke first because a little nod to the Labyrinth board game group.
yes, yeah.
So we thought, I'm kidding, I'm making a Dark
Dark
Crystal
Crystal
board game
one.
group.
Yeah, and
But it works.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that was sort of like one of the, I guess, surprises, like with that group, at how many members sort of joined that group with Labyrinth, and
Yeah,
they're
really.
like, oh, let's see,
It
let's see.
started out.
Yeah, and sort of like,
Yeah.
let's see if it if it can work with the Dark Crystal, its own sort of group. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got your copy of that board game yet, or?
Not yet, unfortunately. Switzerland is slow. But it's on the way. I ordered one, so
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, yeah.
it's on the way.
So hopefully not too long. Yeah.
I'm looking forward really, and I hope they do the mystic figures.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool. I mean, I'm sort of hoping to I'll probably have I think Johnny Fraser Allen, who did the sculpts and sort of the artwork
I
of
think he did.
the board game. Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna have him on the show.
I think he did them, I think.
Yes, yeah, with the sculpts, yeah. Because I remember I saw his there was a YouTube video that featured him, and he sort of talked about the process that he went from, doing the sculpts at large scale, and then it
Yeah, that's
3D scanning
yeah.
it and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope they release them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally, yeah. So
He also did much more for Labyrinth. He did the Wise Man and I think the Junk Lady and yeah, lots more. And it's everything unreleased.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So no, which is cool. So yeah, I mean, I actually did get my hands on the board game, which I was actually surprised it came out when it did. I thought it'd take ages in Australia as well, and I haven't fully played it yet. I've sort of been reading the rules and trying to work out what all these things do and whatnot. But I mean, it's fun. So I'm hoping probably in a couple of days' time we'll actually find someone to play it with.
Yeah. Or you can play alone,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
maybe.
Play both sides, the Skeksis and the Gelflings, and
Yeah, I don't know. It's from one player, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, not as much fun, I
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Or we can do a Skype
Yeah,
game session.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Bland suggested that.
Ah,
Bland
yes,
Garrett.
yeah,
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 he
of course,
wanted to make a Skype game session.
yeah. But that'd be actually kind of
Why not?
interesting, yeah.
So at the moment, I'm doing some more sketches, drawings, and yeah, Dark Crystal, of course. Yeah, but I'm a bit waiting with figures now because lots of stuff coming out now, so it's easier to buy them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. When they're making them now,
Yeah,
so
I
no, which
really
is
hope
cool.
the
Yeah,
Skeksis statue is awesome.
yeah, yeah. I hope so too.
Chronicles
Yeah,
will be Skeksis.
yeah.
I really can't wait.
Yeah, yeah, it's very exciting, and especially like once the Age of Resistance comes out, like what merchandise, having new Gelfling characters and yeah, just so much.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. But what I really hope they don't take the Disney route with being politically correct. I mean, yeah, that happened with Last Jedi, so it really annoyed me. Yeah, I think they should concentrate on a good story and not thinking about what other people think. So, I mean, you can't do justice to everyone, so just leave that PC crap away. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's my opinion. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, yeah,
as an
yeah,
artist, you
yeah,
always do what you really like, what you love to see,
yeah. And I know,
and
like,
not
yeah,
thinking what other people would love.
yeah,
Or
and I guess
yeah,
like it's been really interesting, yeah, like with the Last Jedi, just how divisive the film really came with that film. I mean, like for myself, like I mean overall, like like I enjoyed it. Like I mean, for me, I loved sort of the Luke and Ray sort of storyline. I thought that was
yeah,
I was
of
cool
course.
with that. I know people complain about how how different Luke was. But for me, I was sort of okay with that because it's like, well, so much time has
Yeah,
passed.
there was stuff I liked,
Yeah,
but overall,
yeah.
yeah, I thought, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
for me my trouble was really just with sort of the resistance plot line with, the Canto Bight stuff and just sort of
yeah,
but I mean sort of, when I've watched it a couple of times, I mean sort of, from the film that really the whole film is about failure. Basically everyone failed, both
yeah,
both the resistance and the First Order. I mean, sure the resistance
especially the
probably
man.
yeah, even though, the resistance sort of won, by just that, by a spark, as I could say.
Yeah,
But still, yeah, yeah. And I think, such a different change to, with Star Wars. So, but yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a bit sad, I
Hmm.
think, but
Yeah,
oh well.
yeah. I mean, there'll always be
I
more Star Wars films to, you know, to enjoy and or to not enjoy, you know, and that's the fun of it, you know, just sort of, you know, be able to discuss about
yeah,
things about it and
yeah.
yeah.
I like movies which don't care about PC, and
Hmm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, there is always someone who doesn't like it. So just do what you think is right, what you feel is right for even for Dark Crystal. I mean, it has to feel like Dark Crystal. Yeah, it's not about politics.
No, no, no.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I know I was just trying to think. Like, I know a lot of people online when they always compare the Skeksis to a bunch of politicians, you know, regardless of what
yeah.
country or
Okay,
anywhere,
but
just in general, that sort of
yeah,
thing. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's
yeah,
not obvious.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You can always compare something.
yeah, of
It's
course, yeah.
always something. Yeah, but it's not uh, deliberate. I
No,
think
no, no.
it's the right
And
word.
it's not
Yeah.
and it's not the real world, you know. It's Thra, you know, with those characters. So nothing like
Yeah,
Earth.
yeah, yeah. It reminded of nothing about our world to me. So yeah, it was perfect to me at least.
And so I mean, like, you know, with the film, like what is sort of like your favorite character, you know, from the Dark Crystal?
Oh, that's uh, difficult to say. I mean, I love the complex, detailed characters like the Skeksis or Ogra. I mean, they look amazing artistically. But back then, when I was 10, when I saw the movie in the theater, I always wanted to be Jen.
Yeah, yeah,
So Jen was my fave, yeah, as a child. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, that's sort of with me too. Like, I've always been, you know, I like Jin as a character as well because I sort of really related to him.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, for me, like, I mean, my background with myself is like as a kid, I was you know, I have a bit of autism or what, you know, diagnosed with autism, but that was more in the sort of the speech problems
Yeah,
mainly,
okay, yeah.
and so
Well, nowadays everyone has some mental illness. They always find some new illness, some new diagnosis. Really, everyone could be.
and like for me as a kid, you know, I always had trouble sort of communicating or saying words properly and whatnot. And I think with the Dark
Ah,
Crystal,
okay, yeah.
and I think like with the film like the Dark Crystal, because the language within the film is so basic, you know, English sort of so to speak, that it was
Yeah,
probably
it's
one of those,
easy.
yeah. And I think it was like one of those films where I sort of understood the story or I could understand sort of the meaning bit, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
when they're
that's
talking back
fascinating
and forth. Yeah.
because you started this podcast, so that kind of helps also to communicate.
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
Communicate.
yeah. And I mean, like, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
because I never noticed you speak excellent. You
no
can
thanks. Yeah,
communicate really well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was
Yeah,
you know, growing up, it was you know, I had a lot of always went to see a speech therapist, you know, or had lessons that I used to go see my speech pathologist once a week. You know, as a kid, you know,
okay.
almost all the way to, you know, up before just during my primary school years. So
Okay.
probably
Yeah.
when I was like, I'm just trying to think, probably up to like probably 13 years old, probably
Oh,
like
yeah.
six. Like I can't really remember what top of head, but I think it might have been between 5 to, you know, 12 or 13 years old. You know, going to see the speech pathologist and, you know, being able to pronounce words properly.
Yeah. Yeah. But it helps. So
Yeah, it does. It
I
does.
mean, we can learn uh, every time in our lives. Even now, I learn new stuff. So it's never late. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing about the Dark Crystal is every time when I watch the film, there's always something that I never noticed before. So I mean, and that's when I've been going through these Dark Crystal Minute shows with myself and Jamie, there'll be new things that we haven't, we just never noticed before. It's like, oh, look at this, this fox fairy character, when Jen was singing with a
so
pipe, and yeah. So that's
it's really funny when Jen's sitting there naked.
Yes, yeah.
I always thought he looks kind of strange. He has these seams around the neck and the hand. He always looked kind of like he had some clothes.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. He never did. Yeah.
He isn't seamless.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has these kind of don't know.
Okay. Yeah. It's just one of those things. Yeah. Just representing the innocence.
Interesting, yeah, but it's a beautiful scene. Yeah, I never thought about it as being naked.
No,
it just felt natural.
Yeah, neither did I as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just natural there. I mean, yeah, and now we know he was swimming before, so.
Yes,
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean that's sort of like the exciting thing of when we get our hands on the 4K Blu-ray, being able to see what new things we'll discover. But yeah, it's just very exciting. Seeing the film, in a new format. It's such an exciting time to be a fan of the Dark Crystal.
Indeed, yeah. And what I thought a year ago, I thought that they will do a 3D version of Dark Crystal, but now I realized there isn't any 3D anymore. All new TVs are only 2D.
Yeah, because
3D is gone. Huh?
Yeah. It sort of has like with with Blu-ray, and I don't think. Well, with home video, like I don't really see 3D sort of making a comeback. I mean, I can still see it, in use for in theaters and stuff. So I know we have the Avatar sequels
in theaters, yes. But now it's gone. As home video is gone now.
Yeah. No, but
I always had these ghosting effects. I always see some double images, so okay, I don't really need it.
Yeah.
I'd rather watch on 4K.
Yeah.
I
me too. Yeah.
I don't know, but to me 3D never really worked 100%.
Nah, like.
Did you test 3D at home?
Yeah. I mean, I actually did had a 3D Blu-ray player. At my parents' place that had a 3D TV as well, and like it was not too bad, but it doesn't match up to seeing it in the theater on the big screen. I think 3D really only works well in that format.
Yeah, and you also had these double images?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, and I think it's to do with the angle of like where you're sitting. Yeah. I think so. Like if you're sitting like right in the center. Then it's,
you need the right position.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that can be a bit of a cause. Weird. Yeah, and also like that was the one thing that I actually heard about yourself, that you actually had a chance to meet with the Frauds. How did that all came about?
Well, I bought some Fraud books, and I was a huge fan, of course, and I wrote to the publishers from the books. So, and one of the publishers forwarded my letter to Fraud. I also sent some drawings, sketches of mine, and and I was and Brian Fraud replied.
Oh wow!
He wrote a letter, and I was really amazed. He wrote he liked my stuff, and he's happy to hear that I collect so much of his work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and then I got his phone number, and one day I called him. Me and my English. Yeah, so I had him on the phone. I was really shy and nervous, and
Yeah.
I mean, he was a god to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but he was nice, and we arranged a date
Oh, that's
for a
cool. Yeah.
meeting. Yeah, so I took the next flight
Yeah.
to London
Yeah. To see
then,
him. Yeah.
and from London you take the train,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's in Dartmoor,
Yes.
Chackford,
Yes. Yeah.
Chackford, where he lives. Yeah, yeah, it was really an amazing time.
Yeah.
So, and Brian came. It was fun because we took a taxi to their house, to the Frauds.
Yes. Yeah.
It was There is no buses, nothing there, so it's really almost only nature there. So you have to have a car there. So we took a taxi and drove. I said to the taxi driver, Brian Froud, you know him? And he, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was not the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, he knew his address, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was there about an hour or so,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole family was there. Wendy, Toby.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Um, uh, they showed everything they had.
Wow. Yeah.
They asked about our crystal props and stuff, and unfortunately they only had mystics clothing moment. Yeah, it was fun. I also asked Brian about his favorite movie, which one, Labyrinth or Dark Crystal.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. And
So yeah, he said Dark Crystal.
yeah. I guess that was the film that really started it all. With him getting into as a film concept designer, going from just being an illustrator, artist, in general, going into a whole new, area, with film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more special, yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So a lot of great memories, yeah, with meeting the Frauds for the first time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really,
that's
and
great.
yeah, and yeah, they were really kind. He also drove me back to
Hmm.
the
Oh wow,
to the
yeah,
train
yeah,
station. Yeah,
wow,
yeah, he had a small car. It was actually quite funny.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's
So
so cool.
everything is possible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
But I must say that was in '96. That was
yes,
before
yeah,
internet
yeah. It was.
and
Yeah,
everything. Yeah, I think nowadays it's much more difficult because they get so much fan mail and requests. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, 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 for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
So okay,
that's cool.
yeah, that's the little story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, big story.
yeah. He also gave me a sketch from Labyrinth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I posted that one.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
he
that's cool.
signed some stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing.
We'll just wrap it up, but I'll just say, Laszlo, thank you so much for being on Trial by Stone.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
You've already taken too long, Gelfling. Hurry!
At last the crystal calls. It is time to return to the castle.
The crystal calls! To the crystal chamber!
Now that's all the time I have for this episode of Trial by Stone. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, you can do so at darkcrystalpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Dark Crystal Podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at Dark Crystal Pod. We're also on Instagram at Dark Crystal Podcast. We also have a Patreon campaign happening with the podcast. You can check that out at patreon.com/Dark Crystal Podcast. And if you can give us a review on Facebook or on iTunes, that'd be greatly appreciated. I hope you all enjoyed the show and come back next time for more Trial by Stone.